Now, the Penn State, if anybody's watching, not to jump ahead, but Tim did a little bit there, so I'm going to follow suit because I watched Penn State take on Illinois. That was an ugly, ugly football game. Somewhat to Penn State's credit and Illinois' credit, it was a Big Ten football game. Drew Aller is a lot better than Max Brosmer, but he's not a great quarterback as of yet. He's a very talented quarterback who will earn a paycheck in the NFL to some degree. Whether he's holding a clipboard or he's a starting quarterback, I don't know at this point. He's going to be earning money in the NFL. They didn't want him throwing the football. They I don't know if it was Illinois bringing Penn State down or if after Illinois scored on the first drive, James Franklin just determined after a couple more drives, they can't score against us. They won't score the rest of the game. So we're just going to play it safe. But that was an ugly football game. And part of that's to Illinois' credit. They're probably better than Wisconsin. And Penn State, if Penn State plays USC the way they played Illinois, Penn State is like a zooped up version of Wisconsin. Like, we want to throw it 15 or 18 times and slug this out and dominate with our running game and our defense. And you're going to see, not to the extent of Michigan, because Drew Aller can complete a forward pass, but you're going to see two contrasting styles, much more to a larger degree than I anticipated, because I think Penn State, and I think they do have some capabilities on the outside, and Aller is a future pro. They should be able to open it up. So I don't know if it was just last week, but this could be just a better version of Wisconsin coming to the LA Coliseum in 2 weeks.
I can't escape the idea that Penn State is keeping the playbook very vanilla heading into the USC game. Keep in mind that Penn State plays UCLA this week at home. like that's a scrimmage. Like you can have like 5 plays in the playbook and you can beat UCLA. So I think Penn State, is just keeping it very simple, and you're going to see the funhouse from Andy Kotelnicki against USC. Like, there's no reason for Penn State to show its hand. That defense had everything under control, and I know Penn State week is next week, but hard to avoid talking about this game a little bit. Tom Allen, Danton Lynn, like 2 guys who are on our defensive coordinator big board. When we looked at who's going to replace Alex Grinch, and everyone here knows I was a Tom Allen guy, but I was completely sold by Danton Lynn from the start. That like as soon as I began to see what he was all about, he's impressed me every step of the way. So it's going to be a showdown, and that's going to be the number one storyline, really.
All right.
One thing that has to be mentioned. And I mean, I know that we have Minnesota this week, but you guys heard that the Penn State game is a CBS game. I mean, what's going on here? Last year it was the SEC on CBS. This year it's USC on CBS. That's 3 CBS games in 4 weeks. Wait a minute. I thought Fox wanted USC in the Big Ten, and I thought that with NBC getting the primetime game at 4:30 Pacific, that you'd be seeing USC slotted in that slot. Now, the Minnesota game, interesting enough, it is a 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific game, but it's on BTN. It's on Big Ten Network. So, I mean, it's pretty crazy, Mark. ABC, which now has nothing to do with the Big Ten contractually, ABC has shown more USC games than Fox has through the first half of the season. No one had that on their bingo card heading into the 2024 season. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, that hierarchy typically from week to week, and I know it changes a little bit because Fox doesn't get that number 1 selection every week, and I don't know what the formula is anymore. I used to in previous contracts, but the Fox noon game is typically the biggest game. And then it transcends from there as either the CBS game or the NBC game, typically the CBS game at 3:30 Eastern, and then the NBC game, and then some smattering of the next Fox game, which could be either a night game as it was with Oregon UCLA. It was kind of the 4th game of the day on Fox late night, the the best game on the Big Ten Network for the day. Is kind of then in that 5th place game. But USC, with not many trips to the Eastern time zone, isn't really exposed to that Fox window, or what they prefer to be that noon best Big Ten game.
Well, you would have thought that the Michigan game would have been the choice, and that didn't happen. But it's really, the real mystery is the aggregate. It's not so much the one game here or there. It's that overall that Fox hasn't had a USC game at all in the first half of the season, and that ABC's had one and CBS has had 3. Like a CBS 3, ABC 1. Fox and NBC 0. No, trust me, no one had that allocation of games before the season.
So what I understand about that is that Fox gets the number 1 selection as the number 1 network. So they took Ohio State, Michigan. They do every year. So that one's out of the way. That CBS did get the second choice of the entire season, and they took that Michigan USC game. That's my understanding of that.
Yeah.
I don't know how it proceeds from there. I don't know if it then goes to NBC and they got the third choice, which I would think would be probably Ohio State, Oregon. And then it would go from there back to Fox maybe. But that USC Michigan game, which was the highest rated game of the week, was considered the second choice overall and the number 1 choice by CBS.
Detective Loki again for another gifted membership. And he did, and you caught that, Mark, but he is a Michigan fan. So, but he says he can't wait to come out and see the campus. When you're coming out, Loki, let me know. I'll show you around the campus. I know it very well. So let me know if you're out here. Appreciate all your support. It's really nice to for you to gift those memberships. Mark, I had someone here. I can't remember. What are your thoughts? Do you think USC has to win out in order to make the playoffs? So a scenario could be where USC could lose, let's say hypothetically, for us to work, Notre Dame needs to keep winning, right? And then drop a game to Notre Dame, which wouldn't hurt them in the Big Ten for a second loss. But also, a close loss to a Penn State team and then winning out with maybe you have a situation where Notre Dame is winning out as well. Maybe a top 10 versus a top 12 matchup there that USC wins with a little bit of flair. I mean, there are many paths for USC to get there still, but I'll stop there by saying if SC doesn't figure out their offensive line, all this is a moot point. I mean, I'm just telling you. It started with probably Penn State. Do you think it's possible with a second loss that they could get into the playoffs?
Oh, absolutely. I think USC is going to be in the playoff unless this second loss is a 42-10 beatdown and there's some kind of crazy configuration of games elsewhere in the SEC, let's say, that lifts a bunch of teams to a 10-2 level. But yeah, USC is going to be in the playoffs at 10-2. What I find interesting is this kind of struck me in a conversation today, that if you look at the divergent paths with USC not playing Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, you've got Iowa not playing Oregon or Penn State. You've got very few games between those top teams. Michigan's not playing Penn State or Iowa. That even if Iowa loses this Saturday as expected against Ohio State, they've got a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way. They could go unscathed. They'll have one loss in the Big Ten. USC's got one loss in the Big Ten. If USC is able to beat Penn State beats Ohio State, I don't need to concoct the ultimate craziness of like 5 teams being one loss, which you can fairly easily do, but at least 3 or 4 with one loss is pretty viable because there are just not enough games between those 5 teams.
We're from the Mark. We're from the Pac-12. We know all about knocking off your top teams and knocking yourself out of playoffs. So it's what we did for a long time.
Top 6 teams are sitting with 0 or 1 loss right now in the conference. Michigan hasn't lost a conference game. We're not even counting some kind of wild card. Like, listen to Rutgers. I know Rutgers has to play USC. They don't play Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Iowa, Oregon. They don't play the other 5. Who gave them that schedule?
I think the SEC concocted that one for them.
So we could have an interesting, I kind of forecasted this coming down the road for these conferences because they're becoming too large and there are too many teams that aren't playing one another, that we could have some crazy 4-way tie for first place.
Dust off that tiebreaker tablet and see what goes. Because you probably are going to need it.